Well, if you just want to start out and just tell us where you're at, kind of what you're doing now, and kind of how that journey has looked like over the last several years for you.
It's not that complicated. It just has so many little pieces. But well, I'm an astrologer. I do readings, and I'm also a coach, a transformative coach. And so I combined astrology and coaching and work with people on a, longer term basis to use the gifts of their natal chart and build a happier life
Of their what
health
chart?
of their natal chart or birth chart. So that's the piece of astrology that every astrology consultation focuses on, which is the moment of time when you were born. It's an energetic imprint that you respond to, kind of like a tuning fork, so all the planets are in the sky when you're born and in a certain configuration, and it's a correlation. It's a representation of the energies that you resonate with. And so everything in the consultation is going towards discovering what those frequencies or energies are and kind of putting some descriptive labels on it and talking about things deeply so that people can recognize these qualities in themselves, recognize where your energy is fed, what your identity tends to be wrapped up in. These are patterns. We all have patterns of thinking, patterns of behavior, tendencies to attract certain kinds of people into our life, tendencies to automatically reject certain ideas or like circumstances, like tendencies to invite certain experiences into our life. We all have different ways of learning, different ways of approaching obstacles or relationships or having parents, being parents, right? Different ways of taking in information, learning and organizing information or finding meaning, different ways of relating to God and worshiping, right? And finding that transcendent place where we're fed. So the natal chart it's like this 2-hour fire hose of let's put a magnifying glass on some of these patterns. And then I'm a coach, and most of the time I'm using astrology with that at different points in the coaching, but it's for, I work with people to build a business or to make a relationship transition or to find some sort of equilibrium in their life between parenting and career, or to get to the next level of their career.
How long have you been doing this with the astrology and the coaching together? Or
I've been an astrologer for, I don't know, about a decade. I've been an astrologer. Before that, I was an acupuncturist. So my trajectory sort of went, I had 10 to 12 years as an acupuncturist. I had a private practice. And I also have some improv and sketch comedy background. So I had about 8 years of parallel kind of improv sketch comedy work with a comedy troupe in Los Angeles called The Groundlings.
That's fun.
It was really fun, really fun. And it was an incredible listening training. That's the thread that really tied it together. It's taught me to be more comfortable in the unknown.
Yeah.
In uncertain circumstances, right? It's like
off the cuff and
just play. Yeah. And just following an impulse or an instinct but really listening to who you're playing with, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing that in acupuncture. And then I also sort of like went off into design a bit with interior design. And I even had like a custom clothing business for a moment where I did men's shirts and women's shirts.
So it sounds like you've always been a creator of sort.
Yeah, I've always been creative.
Yeah.
So it's been creativity and healing, creativity and healing, creativity and healing. And they both have a lot in common with each other.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I know one of the things that you said you learned from the improv time was a mantra or something that you had. Do you want to speak more on that?
There are rules in improv, right? There are rules that help it work, right? Help a scene work. If someone says, all right, let me have a suggestion. where are these, have you ever seen Improv and they ask
Yes,
the audience, where are these people? And they're like, they're in the grocery store. Okay. Go, right. And and so these two people, they're just in a grocery store. That's it.
yeah.
And one person does something. Both people don't know, what's going to happen. So there's something where if someone says, here's a pen, right? I want you to take some inventory of what cans are on the shelf. The rule is yes, and you always agree with what your improv partner says 100% of the time. The minute somebody says no,
it ends.
It ends. The scene dies. That's not a pen. That's a cucumber. Right? It's like yes, and is this magical phrase. It's just magical. That propels the motion, the creativity forward. It creates possibilities. It opens the mind. It opens the opportunities like immediately. And so, yes, and I think it's like the number one rule for life, right? There's in any kind of conflict or obstacle, it's the power of saying, yes, this is hard. And
right. And
right?
I'm okay.
It's like
there's a way. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who it was that said, I butcher quotes. I should never be allowed to quote anybody because it'll come out like a game of telephone. But some wise person said, the measure of true intelligence, the ability to hold two truths at once, right? There's always more than one truth.
Right.
Yes, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this too. Or I can feel this and
right.
also feel this. I could do this and do that. You could do this and do that. We live in a world that really, really, really wants to reduce everybody to black or white. The switch is on or off. It's a yes or a no. Maybe it's not an answer. You can't have two yeses, right? It's like, that's just not, that's not how the world is. So yes, and breaks that up.
Right. And I feel like we're in such a yes, but society, that's just the norm as to what people, it's like, yeah, this is possible for them, but that's not possible for me. And, just that little switch, if people were to really, and it's possible for me. Yes, there's people that are doing it and it's possible for me. So I think
and anytime anyone's saying yes, but they're not saying yes, but they're saying no, but
right.
They're just not they don't want to hear, we're not comfortable saying no.
Right. Is that something you're comfortable with?
Saying no?
Yeah.
I think most of the time. So, there are circumstances and contexts where it's obviously hard to put up boundaries no is a boundary. Right. No is, it's lots of things. A no can be a boundary. It can be protective. It can be a statement of anger, right? It could be a rejection. And those things are hard to be sure of, right?
Sure.
Especially if someone else is involved. Like I don't find myself saying no a lot of the time, but because I think there are so few things that I'm positive that I should say no to. But like if someone says, do you want oysters? I'd be like, no.
I'm with you there.
It could be like very simple things. Like, do you want to stay up and go to this party, but you can't leave, but it's not going to be over until 1 a.m. I'd be like, no, I want to be in bed earlier than that. Like there are things that I know about myself, but I definitely try to keep the word no, N-O, in a cautious kind of, I like to use it cautiously, I guess, because I like an open mind. I like seeing more possibility.
I like that.
And anytime, honestly, Jamie, anytime I've said, yeah, it's not for me. I think almost every time, 6 months later, there I am doing that thing that I said it wasn't for me, or no, that's not a great idea. Well, it was usually the great idea. No is a really good indication of what we're afraid of. And like, oh, I don't know, I might get a little embarrassed or humiliated if I do that thing. That's usually, especially from an astrological perspective, No is the word no is a good indication of, well, the God is kind of telling you that you need to try to maybe stretch yourself a little and go in that direction. So it's usually a pretty good measure of what we need to take another look and maybe take a baby step towards.
Sure. No, I can relate to that. The first time I left corporate, I remember like my last day at work, one of my friends was like, Jamie, you should start a podcast. And this was almost 4 years ago now. And I was
No.
like, what would I even say? Like, no, like, yeah, it's interesting. I love podcasts, but like, no. And here we are. And it's so
Right.
funny because breaking up with corporate, it's full circle. And it's like, oh, that's what I could talk about. The thing that was right in front of my face. There was a lot between that no and where I am today. There was a lot of self-growth and self-discovery that was like, okay. I mean, sometimes you just need that space, right? To where it's for God to work on you.
We always need that space.
Yeah.
Oh, like 100% of the time. I was just having a conversation with someone about this idea of like having a goal or an ambition or a vision or going for something or just having a point in space and time that you're like, yeah, I want that in my life at some point, or I want my life to look like that at some point. And then we set up these like straight tracks to speed towards that point. And I don't think that's how it is. I think it's more of like an exploring the territory, right? Like we get a map and we're like, oh, this is interesting territory. Maybe I'll start exploring it.
Yeah.
Right.
Straight
And
paths has
so,
never worked for me.
yeah. So it's almost like the thing that's a no is like a really tall, it's like the tallest mountain on the map. Like,
You're like,
oh,
no,
let's
I'm
go
not ready.
climb that. And you're like, no, like that's way too high. Are you kidding? But you see on the map, like you're like, well, let's go climb this hill and let's go climb that like mountain that's half as high. And you're like, okay, I could try that. And we try it. And then after doing a few climbs of smaller mountains, it's like suddenly, well, maybe I could try that at a big mountain, right? We sort of prime ourselves and we open to what, we can see more possibility when we just keep looking, right?
Right. No, I
Like we
love
just
that.
keep
It's like
looking.
your compass is set, but it's like sometimes you have to go around the pond or the boulder or whatever, and I really like that whole map analogy because it does get easier. Like every mountain that you climb, everything that you overcome, everything that you learn along the way just builds and builds to where it's just not so scary anymore.
Yeah. I mean, how impossible did learning to ride a bike look when we first like looked at bike? Like, wait a second, I'm gonna balance on little narrow circles, and it looked impossible. It felt impossible. It felt tippy and and then one day you just keep trying. One day something in us finds the balance and the momentum and the perfect like combination of balance and momentum. And before you know it, you're riding a bike, and then you can't remember sort of what it was like to feel like, I don't know, feel so uneasy. I think our minds are the same way. I can't believe I looked at you and thought, or I don't know, we do it all the time. Familiarity,
I love
repeated
down.
exposure, it opens and changes our mind.
I like that. I also like what you said about the perfect amount of balance and momentum because that's so true with everything. I mean, not just riding a bike, but just,
Yeah.
That momentum is such an important piece that I think sometimes our mind kind of blocks what that looks like and we just get stuck in the balance. Like, how am I going to balance this? And not really, I don't know, like, I think it's something I'm learning more as I go, but like that's not the first place my brain goes is to, okay, now I need momentum, right? But it's hard to get momentum if you never start, if you never, if you just get paralyzed by trying to balance everything and just plan everything out and try, you can sit there and analyze the bike all day long about how it should go and how, but until you just get on and go and get that momentum, like none of the other pieces just feel right, you know? So I like that expression, the balance and momentum.
Yeah. And we can only have momentum. We can by doing what's right in front of us. The overwhelm is when we're thinking of, everything moving forward at once. And it's not possible. It's like, how am I going to balance all of this and, sustain the energy and get all of this done? And it's like, you're doing it all in your mind. Like we do this in our minds. We're like, I mean, I do this all the time. Or I'm like, I set a goal and then I'm like, okay, everything I need to do to reach this goal. And then, I find myself like 3 days in, like paralyzed, right? I'm like,
yes.
Oh, wait, we can only do what, like the next thing. We can only do pedal one foot at a time. You can only take care of your family while, you're making dinner, and then you can work, the next day. And then you can take care of a friend, with a conversation, and then you can work. And then you can do an email to like put something into the, put some bait out into the water, or make a connection or follow up on something. And it's like you can only do one thing at a time. Multitasking is
a lie.
It's kind of, it's kind of a lie. It's kind of a lie, even though people do two things at once. Only one thing is getting the fuller attention.
Right. And I don't know how you feel. I obviously, sorry, I spoke over you, but like it almost seems like it doesn't even get your full attention because you still have that other thing open. So, I mean, it gets more attention. One thing will get more attention, but I have found personally, like when multitasking that, and obviously we're women, right? We've got a lot of shit going on. We have to multitask.
Yeah.
But I think you also have to be cognizant that if you're, quote, multitasking, by definition, there's not one thing that is just getting your attention, your full attention, and knowing when you can multitask and whenever you need to just focus.
Yeah. The rule with multitasking is, I said that multitasking is, you got to be 100% okay with 80%, right? Or 70% or 50%. You have to be all in on imperfection. And that's where people lose it. It's that, I can't do it all. It's like, okay, you can't do it all. But yes, you can do a lot of it. You just, not everything gets the perfection is going to pass the perfection test. And you know what? That's fine.
Yeah, that's
fine, because that's that I find is like a major recipe for overwhelm. It's
yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, I should have, shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's like, yeah, but you didn't. So move on. Just next time, give it your full attention if it's that important, right? Or it's okay. You got the email out. It's okay if there's 4 typos. They're going to know you were on the run, right? It was typed on your phone. It says sent on my iPhone, right? It's like there's always like people are human, and I think most people, if they understand their own humanity enough, are very forgiving. No one is as hard on us as we are on ourselves.
That is so true. So true. And it's such a shame too. It's just like in a world where it seems like you would really benefit. Obviously you do benefit when you are your biggest cheerleader, but it's just not something that's inherent here in America anyway. You know what I mean? I feel like society teaches us a lot to look out to other people and other people's opinions, and just being able to, hold that focus for yourself, I think is big.
Yeah. It's, it's like breathing, right? There's constant input. You have to know, I guess what I try to concentrate on is just being aware of what I put into the world, right? Is it coming from me, or is it everything is coming? It's not, is it coming from me? It's knowing that everything is coming from me. everything, my perception, my whole experience of reality, my bad mood, my good mood, my intentions, my love, my anger. No one is making me feel any other way than I feel. No one is causing me to think these thoughts that I have, right?
Yeah.
It's all self-generated.
Have you always been that way? Like, have you always know? Like, I'm just curious, at what point do people start to realize that? Because like I'm in my, like I'll be 42 and like by the time this airs, and I feel like I am just now figuring that shit out. Like I'm just now to the point to where like everything that you're saying just resonates and clicks in. And it's just like, but even 5 years ago, it would have been like, what is she talking about?
No,
I'm in a bad mood because of them.
Right. No, and that's a I mean, well, first of all, no, I didn't understand this until probably 3 years ago when I started to read certain things and study with certain teachers. But I still forget all the time.
Right.
I mean, our life is like a process of just constantly remembering and then re-remembering what is true and who we are and what our integrity is based on and what alignment and harmony it feels like for ourselves. We get pulled out of it constantly, right? It's just remember. It's when people meditate, they remember who they are. They remember these things. When people exercise or dance or use creative self-expression or play with their kids or have a date night with partner or volunteer work, with the elderly or build someone a house or pass a homeless person on the street and stop for a minute or pray in church or sing in a community, or it's like anything. Like there are these moments where we can remember, I remember who I am because it's a feeling. It's not, we get out of our heads and we go into a feeling and then we remember and then we forget. And then we remember, and we forget, we remember. So no. And I think we spend the rest of our lives remembering. I think that's the gift of aging. People are like, oh, I don't want to get older. I'm like, but you're so much wiser than you were. And because you're so much wiser, it's like your experience of life is going to be so much richer.
Yeah.
And it's informed by something deeper than the intellect. I got this. It's like, really, you're going to live like that? Well, good luck. Good luck having fun and laughing and, good luck with the joy, Mr. Intellect, right? Good luck with the laughter piece, Mrs. Intellect, right? It's no, I rediscovered all the time. And you are at a magical age, right? 42.
I'll be 42.
This is a moment for you.
It feels like a moment. I'll be
you're at a massive individuating moment that happens around the age of 42, which is a big, like, it's sponsored by the planet Uranus. But there's a part of all of us that really wants to individuate, and this is a little bit of astrology for you, but individuate and sort of break from convention, break from whatever tradition you were raised in, whatever culture has told you, Jamie, that you have to fit in by being X, Y, and Z. Well, around the age of 42, you're like looking at X, Y, and Z, and you're like, no, thank you. Middle finger in the air, and you're like, you know what? I think I'm just going to be me. All right. And people around you, if you're doing it right, if you're actually like grabbing this individuating process kind of, and saying like, all right, self, like, let's be our weird self. Let's like, if you're doing it correctly, there will be some very good signs in the form of people around you being like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you spending so much time on this? What are you talking about? I don't know. I don't think it's gonna work. I don't know. Like doubters, people who try to say, why don't you just stay in your box or just do what we're doing? It's better, it's smarter, it's safer. That's a good sign. That's a sign that you're like breaking out and then finding your community, finding your tribe. It's a massive stage of claiming independence. So anyway,
it really feels that way. I'm just curious how how do people go through stuff like that and then have a partner who is not going through something like that? And you know what I mean? Like, it feels like the people around you, and I'm not trying to turn this into a therapy session. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
just like,
interesting. It's not
it's like I'm
therapy.
coming into my power, but that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And part of me is like, okay, well, that's not my problem. And the other part of me is like scared of changing, I'm just wondering how people deal with
Well, that's the tension, isn't it?
that.
It's like I mean, I think you're halfway there by even being aware that you're scared of changing.
Yeah.
And then the other half is the communication piece. And the scary part is facing that we all don't change. We all don't change in the same direction or at the same rate.
Yeah.
But that being said, everyone is changing all the time, right? So it can be the biggest gift in the world to have a partner that's changing at a different rate and pace, because that's rich territory to explore of like, how are you changing? How am I changing? That's where relationship astrology comes in. It's like you can create real compassion for what's going on, especially if there's two different ages in the relationship.
Yeah.
You can reference, if you're with someone who's older, you can reference how they went through something. This is where relationships have the opportunity to get richer and deeper, these hard spots, these challenging times, which are not fun to experience or go through, when you get to the other side of them, are profoundly connecting, where it's like, ooh, we got through that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the nature of growth. That's where you see these people who are together. And by the way, not everyone is meant to take that long journey together. We've got a lot of Catholic guilt hanging over this culture still, where it's like, oh, you should stay together. You should stay together. It's like, but these are two human lives. Like,
Right.
maybe they aren't, maybe they learned what they learned together. And they now, I mean, sorry to be scandalous, but there are some people who are not meant to be monogamous.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean, and there are some people that are very much meant to be monogamous. It's like that's where they learn and are comfortable. So there's a big diversity of ways to be together, and relationships should be allowed to breathe and grow and change. That you lost that love and feeling is what? Like, no, love changes. Love shifts and morphs and grows and expands and grows edges and then gets soft. And it's like, love is a thing we've got a lot of fairy tale myths kind of laid over it. And like, what does a loving conversation even sound like when you're going through something tough? Maybe someone needs to learn to listen to that, or maybe that's where someone develops their voice. There are so many ways to explore. And anyway,
no, I like this because it gives me like a peek into obviously you don't know my birth chart or anything like that, but the fact that I like just how you
what's your sun
integrated.
sign?
I'm a Capricorn.
Okay, well, we could just take that as a very simple. So Capricorn tends to endure things alone. I got this. How are you, Jamie? Fine.
That was like my go-to response for
Right,
solid
fine.
decade.
I'm fine. Just leave me. I'm one step up at a time. This mountain. Can I give you some water? If the mountain is really steep, you need some water. I'm fine. I got this. More. You need some new socks? You've got blistered. No, I'm fine. I got this. You need up the mountain alone, eyes closed. I got this. I got this. That's Capricorn. That's like, I got this. I got this alone. I've got the wisdom I need. Leave me alone. I got this. Now, however, if there was someone in your orbit that needed help, you'd be like, oh, let me be wise counsel for you. You'd turn on that grandmother energy of like, let me help you with my wisdom, right? You understand how to give help, but when it comes to experiencing a struggle or a challenge or an obstacle, the tendency for Capricorn is to kind of go into the cave and be very stoic and endure the challenge alone, right? So the opportunity is to be like, oh, actually, Jamie, there are other parts of you that need partnering. Like, you can't muscle your way through this. right? You can't solo trip your way through this, because your inner needs are actually more connecty, and there's a sensitivity level that you can access, and this would be a good opportunity to try out these different parts of yourself. You've got symbols of communication, where I was talking to someone yesterday who was really injured, like sort of emotionally, mentally. I was carrying around an astrologer had told her that she was direct, but it was like she was a direct communicator, and it was, I guess, said in a very incomplete, brief, sort of negative. They didn't really get into it. So she always felt like she was like hitting someone on the head with a stick every time she talked, right?
Yeah.
I was like, what's wrong with being direct, right? You're clear, you're concise, you're not beating around the bush, you're an effective communicator. Like, that should be really unpacked. There's a gift to being a Capricorn experiencing a struggle. Now, what is the gift? And the rest of the chart kind of like talks to you about that. But
that's really fun. What would a person, if they were interested in learning more about you, like what would those kind of packages look like, or kind of how are you reaching people?
Usually everyone starts with a reading, just because people are usually astrology curious. So I think one time I had someone just go straight into coaching with the astrology. So I do readings. I do a natal chart reading. It's 2 hours, and we go deep into everything I can fit into about 2 hours. It's plenty. And then some astrology clients want to continue that conversation, actually do something with the information. Some don't. Some just, the reading was enough, or they get a check-in, or like, okay, now what they want to go into, okay, what's going on now? What's the opportunity? What can I do with this?
Sure.
That's a different reading, where we sort of chart the future a little bit, so someone can spot where they should keep their eyes and ears and kind of heart open, and like look for the opportunities. Like now, like I'd be like, let's find out what this opportunity is and where you should be looking for it. And then the coaching comes, really, I include the astrology. We keep checking in with the chart to work on whatever someone wants to work on, for usually between like 4 and 9 months. Okay. And sometimes did I already say this? People are building a business. Sometimes people are going through a relationship change. Okay. That's definitely true. Some people are working on parenting challenges. Some people are trying to do their next creative. I work with a lot of people in the arts, and, some people they want some creative victories, and we kind of look for how they can develop those and where those could be. But most people just want to be happier and more successful. I mean, honestly, it boils down to, and we work on mindset and seeing themselves truthfully, so that it's only through seeing how we create our experience then that we can create a better, different experience. If we don't see it, we'll tend to default into our habits. Yeah. And we all have bad habits and sabotaging habits, and we all date the same person over and over again, wear the same clothes over and over again, get hired and fired from the same job over and over again. It's like we choose the same friend over and over again. It's like we are masters of repetitive behavior, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just seeing what the gift is in that. Okay, well, what is this pattern for? Like, what would a good version of this habitual way of being in the world look like? And then seeing how we create our experience from our thinking. That's the magic key of the coaching piece, where we see it, and it's like suddenly we're creating our life experience from a completely different consciousness. And again, it's not like all the lights go on and we're like Buddhas walking around. But the coaching ends up helping people remember more often and more consistently. And when we do that, everything changes.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about like the Catholic roots hanging over everybody. Is that something that you had to overcome any?
So I was not brought up Catholic. I use that Catholicism as an example, because it's the most like rule based,
Sure.
right?
Okay, gotcha.
And they're sort of, it's a cliche form of religion almost at this point when you're talking about religion. No, but I was brought up very fundamental Protestant Christian upbringing. And yeah, so I'm kind of like, I feel like, what are the 4 states where you can stand in each state all at once, where they touch at the corners,
Oh, I
right?
think it's, yeah,
You,
Colorado, Nevada,
right.
Utah,
So
Wyoming.
that's what my relationship to God feels like. It's like I feel like I can find God anywhere. I feel like I can find God in a Presbyterian church service. I used to for some reason my best friends growing up were always Jewish, and so I loved going to temple with them. No, I'd spend the night on a Friday, and I get to go to temple with them on a Saturday, and then the next day I'd be in our Presbyterian church. And I just found, even though I didn't know anything about the Jewish religion, there was something in the room. There was something in that big Torah and the mysticism and the ritual. And, I could find God there. And it was in the feeling. And then my sort of metaphysical self started emerging when I was a teenager, probably earlier, but I didn't call it that, right? When I was a child. And so I could find God, as that sort of emerged, and I explored different energy, I don't know, ways to access energy, whether it was through like divination or self-help books, but it was definitely, I was always attracted to metaphysics, acupuncture, when I started studying in my 20s. My relationship to God expanded into energy medicine and energy fields and the understanding quantum, the quantum universe, and
Right.
just kind of going out there. And then by the time I got to astrology as a more professional pursuit, I sort of felt like, it's all there. All astrology is a language. It's no different than the alphabet. It's, if you drew out the alphabet, I mean, each letter comes from a symbolic source, right? Like our alphabet these days, A through Z, the English alphabet a lot of the letters used to be rune characters. They were these like ancient Nordic sort of Viking symbols that meant something. The meanings were different. Like there's embedded meanings in everything. Yeah. Astrology is no different. So a little symbol. So for like, Venus and Mars, right? We have 2 symbols. Well, we see these everywhere. It was on a, 70s necklace. It was on they can be on bathroom doors. It's like, they just mean something. Like this is Venus. It's associated with a planet up there, but it's not as much about the planet as it is about the energies present in the universe. And so when we look at a map with all of these symbols, the circular map, a reading is literally just reading the symbols and talking about meaning, no different than reading words on the page. Yeah. So do I, so this issue of just trying to like tie it back. Once I deeply understood astrology, there was no longer any reconciling it with my religious upbringing. Right. Like I can both appreciate and read the Bible and understand. This is no different than. It's not like the English alphabet is evil. So neither is the symbols of where things are in the sky. Now, what we do with it is, I don't see it any different than poetry or a beautiful essay, a beautiful descriptive essay about something. It's just a different kind of language. And if you do really believe that God or source, the word is like so individual again, or Allah, or divine intelligence, or universal love, or whatever, but let's just say related to the Christian God. If you do really believe that God is almighty, well, I mean, and put the stars in the sky, and even says in the Bible, like, let them be signs, and three wise men followed these things in the sky. And like the Bible is like rife with examples of people using the sky and the seasonal symbols, and all the holidays are timed on the moon. And I know that ties into like pagan things, but there's so many. I'm like, obviously God created this relationship between us and everything around us. So what's wrong with trying to understand it?
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, well, I don't think it's 1100 anymore. I don't think the Pope is going to mind if we actually learn to read.
Right.
And learn to read the Bible for ourselves. And while we're at it, maybe learn to read our own map of the sky and understand ourselves better. You know, these rules about astrology being evil or bad, I mean, these are ancient, power-driven rules that wanted to keep, you know, the church as the only and final word. So I just, it's not a, people who understand what astrology really is, you know, let me put it in the reverse way. Anyone who is criticizing or condemning or afraid of astrology doesn't know what it is. It's either going off of someone else's ill-informed opinion. I mean, it's like anything.
Right.
Usually what we criticize, we don't understand. Usually what we hate, we don't understand. Usually what we reject, we don't understand. So astrology is, you know, I mean, I just love skeptics too. You know, a true skeptic is supposed to question everything through a process of honest inquiry. You know, they usually get it wrong from the beginning, where they're like, they say that the stars and the moon and the sun in the sky in a certain position make us behave certain ways, make us feel certain ways. I'm like, actually, no professional astrologer says that there is a causative effect like that.
Yeah.
So I could go on and on and on, but basically I find it to be a richer description of how God made us, not a forbidden or ill-informed one.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's just something you hear, like
poetic.
Growing up in the Bible Belt about, you know, it's like,
yeah.
astrology, this, that, you know, and
yeah. But, you know, there's also people that read the Bible, you know, literally, like with zero metaphor.
Right.
You know, and, you know, there are people who believe the earth is flat.
Right.
You know, there are people who believe all sorts of things because it's, I mean, you know, and it's not like people have to believe in astrology.
Right.
I don't care. It's like one of those things. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It still actually works. It's still true. It's like, if you don't believe in astrology and it scares you, then don't get a reading. Like it's your life will not suffer because you didn't get an astrology reading. You might be missing out on a really cool experience where you understand yourself a whole lot better. Or maybe some really difficult experiences get put in their proper, compassion infused context. But no one has to get an astrology reading. It's so funny. It's like, just like people who, you know, if you're in the Bible Belt and you don't believe that two people of the same gender should get married, you know, or it's like, fine, then don't go to their wedding, right?
don't marry somebody.
I don't want them moving into my town. I'm like, yeah, they probably aren't moving into your town, so don't worry about it. It's like, I don't want, you know, drag queens moving in, come and eat at our restaurant. It's like, don't worry, you're probably never even going to meet one. It's like, people worry about things that aren't going to touch their lives if they don't want them to.
Yeah, and then offer an opinion on it that is
right. I don't think everyone should live like I do or believe in what I believe. All right. We have many different beliefs, right? It's like, I do believe that, you know, we shouldn't shove our beliefs onto somebody else. You know, we can offer them, but hey, you know, this world is full of people who don't believe the same thing and still manage to get along. Yeah. This whole country is too. You think every progressive Democrat, you know, believes the same things? No. Yeah. We've got all types and all like shades of everything. Same with Republicans, it's like same with Christians. There's so many different kinds of Christians.
Yeah.
I prefer sort of the more mystical, ancient Christianity. I think Jesus was amazing, right? Like I have the Christian fish on my foot, that,
yeah.
And I was attracted to that symbol when I was, in my early 20s, and I just drew it on my foot every day because I'm Jesus as a healer and teacher he's such an inspiring figure, just like the Buddha. And he's an incredible figure, right? There's really no one like him. And, but I have to sort of say, sometimes I'm like, oh, you had a Christian fish. I'm like, yeah, it's not a witness foot. I'm not witnessing with my foot, right? Because I'm a different kind of Christian than someone else who might put that symbol on their car, say, or, right. It's like, symbols can mean a range of things. It's just marks on a page or marks on your foot, right?
I like it. Yeah. Well, Aubrey, thank you so much. If people want to learn more about what you have to offer as far as your services or just love you as a human, where can they find you?
2 easy places. The easiest, I guess, is Instagram, just because it's the only social media I really pay attention to, which is at Aubrey Thorne. And then all my links are there, and people want to message me with any questions or book a reading or anyway, I'm an open book and very, very available. And then my website is aubreythorne.com. Same thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.